Greetings. Welcome to Take 2 of today's ITR Live podcast. I'm your host, Chris Hagen. I'm back here in studio with John Hendrickson and Chris Ingstad for another fun-filled, action-packed episode of Iowa's most inconsistent conservative podcast. John promised me today that he had his hot takes ready to go.
I do.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Chris?
Well, that's actually what I feared. Depending on what topics we cover, I'm worried we're going to get John's hot takes.
I'm afraid. I have a fear going into this because we got a wonderful episode today. And I'm a little bit afraid that because we're going to have to kind of keep our foot on the brake a little bit, that we might not have it, because there's a whole lot of things that I think we'd like to say that we may not end up actually saying.
Things, in fact, that were said right before you hit record.
That's right. So, which is why this is Take 2. So, anyway, John, have you been to the state fair yet?
I have not, no.
I have not. So let's see. Today is now day 6 of the state fair. Been a lot of political activity, and John still hasn't been.
No.
Although I didn't, and no one still is. I don't know if either of you have gotten contacted by anyone, have had anyone tell us that they found Swedish meatballs at the Iowa State Fair.
Nope. I was getting a play-by-play update from the Trump campaign about what his activities were over the weekend.
Yeah.
But no Swedish meatballs. Maybe I should ask them.
Yeah. Well, we could do that. No, Saturday was a big day out there. You had multiple presidential candidates, including Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, and a whole lot of action. So, that's what the Iowa State Fair is. It's beautiful, tons of action, and if you like politics, it's the center of the universe right now. So, anyway, we've got a couple of things that I've just been very eager to talk about, gentlemen. And so the first one is an article that I think actually came out last Friday in the New York Times. And folks in political circles here have been sort of snickering about this article, or just kind of impressed that the New York Times nailed it. So every once in a while, despite the liberal bent, they get it. But I'm just going to read the headline. Now, you guys promised me you've read this, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Here's the headline. New York Times. How are Iowa Democrats? Quote, I can't even describe to you how bad it is. That's the headline. So the New York Times reporters interviewed, I think they said 10 to 20 Iowa Democrats to get their perspective on the state of the party. Now, Yeah, you can. I just want to say, I'm going to try and land this airplane at the end of this conversation, which could take us a lot of different directions, that it's really not just about Democrats and the Democratic Party of Iowa. But with that having been said, we'll see if I can get us there. Go ahead.
In all sincerity, it sounds like some of the elected officials who they interviewed offered sincere and honest takes, and I think that's good.
Absolutely. I mean, the candor that's shown here, one, I think it's good reporting from these New York Times reporters, and I've read some of, I know especially Reed Epstein's stuff before. He's a good reporter. But yeah, I mean, you have people that are just speaking their mind about things.
But I'm not, maybe they interviewed, maybe they didn't, but I'm not sure there were any quotes in there from Democrat voters. I mean, I suppose make a joke, well, can you find one? But that's not accurate. It's frankly not fair.
Right.
And frankly, maybe that's the part of it. Maybe they should quit looking to party leadership and go, what's wrong, and talk to, actual voters who would be, or Iowans who would be likely to support their issues and get the take.
John, you've had a chance to look through this. Is the article fair? I mean, you've got your finger on the pulse of Iowa politics.
Yeah.
So tell me, give me your thoughts.
Well, I think it is fair.
Okay.
I mean, they, I don't think after reading the quotes from the politicians that they interviewed, I don't think they understand why they're in such a terrible situation. And I would offer, here's my reasoning, is that the party has moved so far left that they have completely...
The one thing in this, and I want to go through this article. I want to read some of this stuff, because this isn't a hit piece.
No.
This is just, okay, Iowa Democrat leaders, tell us what's going on the ground, and then they report those findings. I think that's the one thing that is not said in this article because they can't bring themselves to say it, is that folks just aren't buying what you're selling.
Oh. They did. It is literally the last sentence of the article.
Well, yes, the Jack Hatch one message doesn't work in all of Iowa.
But the very last sentence are something along the lines of our message doesn't resonate.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it. We could have saved ourselves a lot of time and a lot of snickering.
It resonates with the faculty at the University of Iowa, not with Main Street. That's where it resonates, and that
well, okay. Let's just go through some of this. So the headline, I can't even describe to you how bad it is. The quote is from Democrat State Senator Claire Celsey from West Des Moines. And Senator Celsey says, as they're asking these questions, it is so bad. I can't even describe to you how bad it is. Ms. Celsey and others describe themselves as exhausted by repeated defeats at the ballot box, an inability to slow Republicans at the state capitol, and loss of first-in-the-nation status.
Those are all objective facts.
Right. And I think back over my years, 12 years in the legislature, from getting elected at the same time as Barack Obama won in 2008, to seeing Iowa being a blue state, Democrat trifecta, to moving to the right, to then having a Republican trifecta, and not just Republican versus Democrat. When the Democrats were in the trifecta, it was a liberal, it was a progressive agenda. And it wasn't just that Republicans won and they lost. It was replaced with an absolutely conservative agenda, which we've talked about many times, you and I, is that we're not saying that Iowa's Republican. We're saying Iowa's conservative now. And so I think that's important to note. They move on to a quote from former Congressman Dave Loebsack, speaking of the faculty at the University of Iowa and who came straight out of that. Not that he was a faculty, but point stands. Now, I think this is really important to note. It's difficult even to recruit people to run when we're so far down. And that's where this really gets beyond just the political pendulum of, well, we're out of power, but we'll be back soon enough. It's at the point now when you lose first of the nation, you're out of power at the Capitol, you start to lack the infrastructure to come back. You don't have the money. You don't have the bench of candidates. And so that's absolutely.
I also thought his excuse for not going to the fair was pretty weak.
Right. Where is that? Okay, I got to get to that one because we got the other fair thing.
Okay.
Do you remember what it was, Chris?
Yeah, he said he's not going to go to the fair because he's not a fan of all the country music acts who are playing at the grandstand. And I'd say, well, first of all, Ludacris and New Kids on the Block, neither of them are country. So he did have some options. And
I'm going to take a small detour here. I was at the fair on Sunday, and I made a point. I got the app out, went down the calendar, and I made a trip to the other side of the fairground so that I could listen to the championship of the fiddling contest. And if you can't enjoy that, hey, sorry. I'm not a big Eric Church fan either, and maybe that's not what I'm supposed to say. I don't but I'll tell you what, that was the most fun I've had at the Iowa State Fair in years, was watching the fiddling championship. So Congressman Loebsack, I
feel like it's a little bit opposing because I think about the Iowa State Fair. The concerts are like an ancillary or a whole separate thing.
Sure.
If I'm going to go to a concert, I'm going to the concert. I don't count that as going to the fair.
Right.
But anyway.
Now, Senator Celsey's excuse for not going to the state fair is she wouldn't go because it's quote unquote Kim Reynolds' show.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's Kim Reynolds' show to the extent that it is because she's made it her show by going out there and meeting every single person there and setting up shop out there for the full 11 days and taking everyone, all comers, and being a part of the whole thing. So she's earned that to the extent that it's there. Quotes from Democrat State Senator Sarah Trone Garriott, who won a very tough suburban election. Mm-hmm. I believe, gentlemen, I believe she's both of your senators.
My senator.
And she worked very hard at that campaign, no doubt about it. But her quote is, "It's just been so exhausting and frustrating to continue to take losses." She added, "If I had known everything I was getting into, I don't think I would have run in the first place because it's just been really hard, but I see so much opportunity in Iowa." I think those are actually very fair points. It can't be fun to just keep taking losses, especially when you work so hard to get there. But yeah.
It's interesting, Chris. I see, speaking of where these things come together, John, is Christina Bohannon is running against Marionette Miller Meeks for Congress again. I don't know if she still is, but at least she used to be a faculty member at the University of Iowa. Yeah. So there's that, and part of her pitch so far is that she has seen what's needed in southeastern Iowa, and then she talks about abortion rights. And as someone who, born, raised, grew up, part of my adult life even in southeastern Iowa, I never got the sense that we were walking around going, what would really help our town, or what would help our manufacturing base or our agriculture, right? The things that drive that area is more abortion rights. That literally never came up. I guess go campaign across southeastern Iowa with that as your message, but I'd point back to Jack Hatch that I don't think that message is going to resonate.
I suspect, I don't have the Southeast Iowa credentials the two of you do, but that the folks of places like Mount Pleasant and Burlington and Muscatine were, as they moved from blue to red over the last decade and overwhelmingly voted for candidates like Donald Trump, are sitting back there thinking, yeah, I'm all on board for Trump, but as soon as someone comes along that's a hardcore abortion crusader, I'm going back to the Democrats. I don't think that's what's in their mind, but tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. And this has been a trend we're seeing not just in Iowa, but in other parts of the country where a lot of rural areas, a lot of working class, blue collar folks are leaving the Democratic Party and joining the Republican Party as a result of, certainly it started with President Trump, but also because the Democrats have moved so far to the left. So, for example, look at education in Iowa. I think that this tells a good story because the left opposed the governor's ESA bill, and look at the number of ESA applications was just off the charts.
From every corner of the state of Iowa.
And so what parents are seeing is not, in a sense, they're upset because what they see is this radical transformation occurring in our society and our culture, and they see the Democratic Party defending these awful things that are going on, this cultural revolution, and so that doesn't appeal to families. That doesn't, and the radical environmental agenda doesn't appeal to farmers. The radical social agenda does not appeal to blue-collar workers. And so you see this. This is why I think there's a shift taking place. And the Democrats, they're appealing to mainly women in the suburbs as well as,
coastal, educated.
The large cities. And that's where their base is getting.
I have seen. Now I'm trying to kind of pull this back together. You're right, John. So the article concludes with comments from former state senator Jack Hatch, who was the Democrat nominee for governor in 2014, I guess. And his comment is that they didn't understand and use social media correctly.
Right, because conservatives have always been known to embrace technology.
We are so on the cutting edge of all of these things. Yeah, we're just way ahead of them on new technology. And then, as you said earlier, the messaging challenge and one message for all campaigns. Why? Okay, so a comment on that. If the problem is that there's one message for all campaigns, then clearly that message is not selling, right? And so we need to be able to try and convince people that some of these candidates aren't actually progressives. But I think the bottom line here is, as John said, the party has moved so far left that Iowans just aren't buying it. They don't want it. And it's cultural, but it's also economic. And I see this argument from folks all the time is that, middle America or rural voters or folks that don't have a college degree are voting against their interests. They don't even really know what's best for you. Hear this one?
Yes, because you outsider do know what's best
right.
for them.
It's so condescending. Is that a voter from Iowa who maybe voted for Barack Obama for president in 2008, who is now enthusiastically voting Republican up and down the ballot, and there are many of those folks in Iowa, is that they've been fooled somehow, or that they're voting against their interests. I mean, the reason that they are now voting Republican is cultural issues on which the Democrat Party is completely in lockstep with the farthest left elements of the progressive movement. And as we've talked about time and again, is they are out of touch on economic issues. I mean, ask the folks from northern Minnesota who's in touch with the economic reality of what's going on in rural Iowa or in some of these hollowing out industrial towns across America. Who's out of touch really here? And so I think it's probably time, and I've just spent 15 minutes piling on, but maybe a little more introspection would be in order. And here's the one place where I will absolutely give these, I'll give them mostly a pass on this, is that I don't believe that there is anything that the Iowa Democratic Party can do to fix the problem. Maybe on the margins a little bit. I'm not sure there's anything these individual senators can do to fix the problem, although maybe on the margins. The problem is coming down from the progressive movement across the country. And folks aren't buying it in Middle America.
No.
It's not unique to Iowa.
That's why last week, I don't know if you saw, but Senator Joe Manchin is considering leaving the party. Now, whether he's doing that because he believes that they're moving too far to the left, or maybe it's an attempt to try to save his Senate seat because he's up against a difficult challenger. But
color me cynical, but okay.
But I think you're seeing. First of all, they're not going to, because you need almost like an intervention. I remember that Seinfeld episode with the intervention, but that's what the Democrats need, and they're not. They don't realize how extreme they've gotten.
No,
and this is this should be Iowa should be a wake up call for them. I mean, this is they're combining the progressivism of the New Dealers with the radicalism of the cultural Marxism of the 60s, and the dangerous combination.
Yeah. I think we've probably beat on Democrats in Iowa, but I think just to completely summarize this, the problem's the agenda. The problem is, and it's mostly national, is that the folks aren't buying the radical lurch to the left on social and fiscal issues.
But the good news is they had Governor Tim Walz come to rally the troops at the state fair. Yeah. So that,
you know what, I will gladly compare and contrast the record of Governor Walz and Governor Reynolds, and stand on that issue. John, another one that I sent you, I don't know if I sent it to you over the weekend or when it was, but this was an article. It was a quote from the Heritage Foundation, about the cost to the American taxpayer of the aid in Ukraine, to the tune of $900 per household. I expected you to be fully outraged by that. Is that an accurate?
Yes. Yeah.
Accurate summation of that? So let me read the quote. The formal aid packages alone amount to a staggering $113 billion, roughly $900 per American household, and almost 12 times the spending cuts promised by House leadership in the annual spending bills. That's a lot of money. By comparison, the annual state budget of the state of Iowa is $8.5 billion. Mm-hmm. We sent $113 billion. I mean, $1 billion here and $1 billion there, right?
There's been no accountability for that
money.
Right.
What are we getting for that?
Yeah, and that's the other scary part, is that as this war gets worse, there's, no one is answering the question of what is the strategic objective of the United States here. And, it's basically Ukraine's turning into a rat hole of just pounding down resources without any accountability, and there's no strategy at all. And I think what's scary is there's a bill that Biden is pushing that he's calling for $40 additional billion in what he's calling emergency funding. And out of that $40 billion, $13 billion would be additional money for Ukraine, and the rest of it he's tying to emergency funding for hurricane and natural disaster relief. And so what gets me mad here is that you have both political parties, the war party, the establishment, that is basically trying to push more funding towards Ukraine. And so, already the so-called debt ceiling compromise that we talked about is already a joke. I mean, it's already been blown apart. And I bet you they'll pass this. And if you vote against it, they'll say, "Oh, you're voting against natural disaster relief. You're voting against hurricane relief," and Zelensky will line his pockets, and again there will be no accountability whatsoever.
That's a tale as old as time, John. You put all the money that's not as politically popular and tie it to some small little piece, and then if anyone votes no against it, you beat them over the head with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how the appropriators win. That's how they continue to fleece the taxpayer is by tie it all together. And heaven forbid that you want a little bit of fiscal accountability in all this, which is the reason I bring this article up. So you've got folks literally running out into the ocean in Hawaii as wildfires devastate that area. And what did the Biden administration offer? Is it $700 to say, hope you can get back up on your feet while your lives are completely incinerated?
And then they turned around and said, but actually give it back to us what we needed for Ukraine?
Yeah, we need even more than that for Ukraine. How about we invest in repairing our own country first? That's a problem. And then just the broader issue of what we're getting out of our investment in Ukraine. And I understand the argument that we've got to stop the aggression. And look, I used to buy into that argument completely. But for the sake of this argument today, the point is we have to be able to ask what we're getting for our investment in anything we spend. These are taxpayer dollars that every single person in America that gets up and goes to work and comes home and has taxes taken out of their paycheck or writes a check or whatever it is, those dollars that they send, they're absolutely entitled to know where they go and to expect them to go to their own collective national interest.
Absolutely.
And it is incumbent on those that choose to spend those dollars to give us a full accounting of what we're getting for them. And I don't think we're getting them in our investment in Ukraine.
No.
Especially so when it's the tune of $900 per family.
Maybe we should worry about what's going on our own border first.
Yes.
Then worry about Ukraine.
Yeah.
And trying to escalate into a larger conflict.
And look, if we were spending $113 billion on securing the southern border, I'd want an explanation of what all those dollars are going for, too.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I support that politically doesn't mean I don't want to know that I'm getting value out of the investment. But it sure feels like we are just chasing good money chasing after bad, and we're just lighting it on fire in Eastern Europe.
And there's no, like I said, there's no, at least I have not seen any strategy of what our objective is in Ukraine.
Well, that's
that's dangerous.
Well, we had the counteroffensive, which was we're funding this huge thing with all these munitions, and the Ukrainian counteroffensive was supposed to get there. Well, no, it's pretty much fizzled out, and they really didn't take much ground back, and we're drawing to a stalemate in this conflict. And the best answer on all this, I still think, came from Donald Trump when he said, "We just need to end this conflict and stop all the dying." That's still the best answer I've heard from anyone on the national stage right now.
Yeah, I think both former President Trump and Vivek have provided
Vivek's been good on this too.
Have been very good and clear on Ukraine, whereas I think the other candidates really need to have a more definitive answer to this issue.
from my corner of the world, what I'm going to say on this is that I just want to understand what we're getting for our investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So, well, gentlemen, that is plenty on both of those topics, and that's what I had prepared for the day.
Okay.
John, I still hold out hope that someone will locate Swedish meatballs for us and we can get you out to the fair.
Yeah.
I think you'd have a ball. I really do. So, all right. Well, that's all the time we got for today. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. And with all of that said, we will see you next time on ITR Live.